That's fine. Okay, I just wanted to jump on this morning, hello everybody, and just I had a question in from one of my readers that was about that while she loves everything that I share and all of the tips that I put out there for you to all help make life a lot easier, is that she struggles to have time to implement everything and feels guilty about pausing to take a break and actually focus on and gather herself to actually figure out what it is that she needs to do and find time for herself. And we all have those moments where we feel guilty that we're not direct our energies to where we should be doing and achieving the things that we want to do in the house and be a good wife, a good mum, a good parent and a good employee while we're at work. It's how do we actually stop and pause for a moment and gather our thoughts and not feel guilty about doing that? What can we do to actually handle that? And so I thought I'd turn to Lee, who I did a Facebook Live with a few weeks ago, and sort of beg her if she could return the favour, really, of give some advice on how to relieve the guilt. So Lee's Facebook group is Journey Through the Guilt Trip, and she focuses very much on helping women to live guilt-free and make their own choices in life. And I thought, Lee, that you would be the perfect person to give me some advice, really, of what I can say to my readers who are struggling and who feel guilty about pausing to actually taking a break to gather themselves and how to relieve themselves of that guilt so that they can actually start making headway. So what do you think? What were your thoughts? Any tips we can give them to make life easier?
Hopefully, yeah. So hi everyone. I think one of the things to bear in mind with the concept of feeling guilty is I talk about guilt as a blanket. So if guilt gets triggered by anything, it covers up any other feeling that you have. So a lot of things get wrapped in a feeling of guilt where actually you can rationalize and be a bit more logical and get rid of that.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the work that I do on my page is about trying to get people to, instead of just accepting the guilt and letting it stop them, actually pick it apart and look at what's going on underneath. Okay. And realize exactly what the issue is. Now, in most cases, it's one or the other. You've either got something I call positive guilt. Now, this is where you want to do something and it's really important to you, but you're not doing it, right?
Okay.
So, in some cases, parents in particular with children, if they do anything that's not child related, they can feel like, oh, I need to, I want to be a good parent and I'm not spending my time on what's important to me. Mm-hmm. They can feel guilty. Positive guilt in that instance triggers a change in behaviour. It makes you go, actually, I don't need to do the dishes now. I need to go and play a game with my daughter, or colour a book in, or read a book.
Yeah.
So it changes and influences your behaviour based on what is important to you. But a lot of guilt comes from external triggers and assumptions and expectations. Mm-hmm. And they're the ones that tend to stop us doing anything. So when you're feeling guilty and you're in that muddle of not really knowing what the next step should be, normally it's because you've got various other people's ideas of what you should be doing, mm-hmm. you and making
so true.
Guilty, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of the time we don't pause, not because we can't pause, but because of those expectations from other people that as a parent, you are supposed to be doing X, Y, Z, or as a business person, you're supposed to be doing X, Y, Z. So it's other people's expectations of us that are making us feel like we'll let them down if we stop.
Mm-hmm. That's so true, isn't it? I think as well the not by stopping and not particularly with being at home with the kids and things, is if you're not focusing on that and you go off and do something else that is good for you or is going to be beneficial to how you run the home and streamline things to make life easier for you, is because you feel that you're neglecting your responsibilities and that your kids aren't having your undivided attention, and that you aren't, by doing that, it means that you're not a good mum. But it's simply not the case, and it's that internal guilt, isn't it, that can eat up at you. And it's exactly the same you're right with the external guilt as well, I think too, is that those expectations from other people are a driving factor that can make you, because you're not living up to their expectations, that also makes you feel like you're failing, and then you feel guilty too, and it's like a perpetual cycle, isn't it?
Completely. And those external expectations are almost always framed as there is a right way to do everything. You're not doing it, therefore you're failing. And the reality is there's a unique way of approaching everything made for everyone. You know, I remember when I had my children, and you know, you walk into the antenatal class, and I deliberately kind of didn't read any of the magazines or books, but there was definitely people coming in with literally like a stack of the Contented Baby book, or What to Expect in the First Year. And it's great, it's knowledge, but if you absorb that as the right way to do it, then all of a sudden you're not paying attention to the relationship with your own child, which is by far the one that's going to tell you how the best way to approach parenting is.
That's so true. Yeah.
So that was probably the first time where I thought, actually, there's all these, it's advice and it's guidance, and it might help you look at things in a different way, but you need to take it on because you see the benefit of it, not because, oh, that person sold that book to, millions worldwide, they must know what they're talking about. That there's a set of guidance there, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right way.
No, absolutely. I think because a lot of the time you look at that and then you set that as the expectation, don't you, of the behaviours that you should be doing and the way to parent, or the way to do something around the house, whatever it might be. You've read it in that book, and if you're not achieving that, then the guilt kicks in that you're not doing things properly, or that you're not living up to those expectations. And instead, if you actually, like you said, as you have your child there, that you look at how you are together, that gives you the indicator of what you need to be doing. And it's just, nothing, we don't get manuals when they're born, do we? They don't come with a manual of this is what's going to happen. Every child is different. Everything you do with them and every way you respond is also, if you're tired, you respond in a different way than perhaps you feel you should, and then you feel guilty because you shout or snap, and all those things. There's just you just muddle through, don't you, trying to find the right way and everything else. But in the back of your mind, as well that there's other things you could be doing to try and make things better and easier, but you don't have the time because you're trying to live up to all these expectations.
Exactly.
And you're distracted as well because you're listening also to what's going on in the playground and all the Susie's doing this, Jenny's doing it this way, well, why am I not doing it that way? I must be doing it wrong. And you've got that comparisonitis as well, and that then makes you feel guilty, and you just get into this whirlwind where you're constantly comparing and analysing how everybody else is doing it. And you don't know how to just stop and take a moment to actually, you just get into this overwhelm of panic, don't you, and this fear that you're failing and that you're not going to be a good mom. And it's really hard to just actually stop and take a moment to pause and sit down. And when we have so much to do all the time as well, and these giant long to-do lists that never get any shorter, that actually finding the time to stop and think about things for a moment, we feel guilty that we're sitting down to, whether it's with a notepad or pen or daring to take ourselves off for a coffee so that we can try and think straight. We feel guilty that we're then not doing the dishes, not doing the washing, and finding the time to do our work in between as well to pay the bills. So going back to what you were saying about breaking down the guilt, where do you start of actually sort of picking through it and figuring out where it's actually coming from?
So the first thing to bear in mind is the difference between time and priority, right? So we all have 24 hours a day. Nobody can get 25, right? So we all have to fit it in within that time. But the key tends to be this kind of myth that the time that you spend on something shows how important you think it is. So rather than the quality of what you're doing, it's all about the amount of time you can give. So if you've got external guilt, usually that's one of the first things. It's this idea that there's a to-do list of right things. At activity level, you can't do it all. So you start panicking. Internal, that positive guilt comes about when you feel you really understand the importance of what it is, right? So I can spend an hour in soft play with my daughter, and I will hate every minute because soft play is
just noisy and loud, and yeah.
and because I'm hating it, I'm like, go off and play. Let me drink my coffee, eat my sandwich. Let me get through this as best I can, because this is making me a good mum.
Yeah.
I could do that, or I can spend 15 minutes drawing, listening to more questions about what she wants to draw and asking lots of questions and getting a real connection with her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's important to me. So taking away, separating this idea that the amount of time that you spend on something is equal to how important you think it is, that's quite critical to begin with. There's also like a little process that I take my clients through. It's like, because it's obviously the journey through the guilt trip, it's all about those small steps.
Mm-hmm.
Feel that guilt trip kind of coming on. It's like, right, what exactly am I feeling guilty for? What do I think is being shown by me doing this or not doing this? And then being really conscious of when you hear yourself saying that, are you hearing your voice or the voice of someone else? Right? So the example that I use in my course is talking to having a vegetarian and a meat eater, right? So it's not, there's no kind of legal right or wrong to that argument. It's an ethical or moral choice.
Mm-hmm.
So if, as a meat eater, you're sitting there picturing, a cow in a field, all of a sudden being like the burger in your meal, and that makes you feel sad and uncomfortable, that's coming from inside you, right? That's you're no longer comfortable with that process. If you're sitting there going, oh my God, they would hate me for doing this because they are vegetarian and they have all these statistics or all this advice as to why it shouldn't be, that's external guilt.
Yeah, that's a great example.
So when you're doing, when you are feeling guilty, the quicker you can go, whose voice is in my head? Is it me? Or is it because my mum would do this? Or
yeah, that's the big one, isn't it? Our mums are always in the back of our minds going, and mum be going, that's not how you're supposed to do it.
Exactly. And we have that from a very early age. It's parenting 101 is, if your mother could see you now, and what would your grandmother say? We use it, and that's what we're trying to do, is trigger guilt because they're disappointed in us.
Yeah.
And we carry that through to adulthood. And the line between that internal and external can look very flaky. It's really vague. It's a really grey area, because a lot of your core values did come from what you saw around you from other people. It's how much you accept them and really understand why that's important to you that can help distinguish between. And then if it's come from someone else, you say, well, do I agree with them? Or am I just following what they're telling me to do because I feel I have to, or or it's the right thing to do, but actually I don't feel like it is. And that can actually be quite a freeing conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
From, okay, I either agree with them, in which case this is now my core value and I'm doing this for me, or I can see where they're coming from, but I don't agree it's important for me. So I'm going to drop that one. And that, that step system can help you just go through each one of those little guilt trips that we have during the day, stop you from living kind of a more decisive lifestyle that you want.
I think that's the key, isn't it, as well? Because when you say, like, of trying to recognize where the voice is coming from and who that thought process is, who's responsible for that thought process that you're having, gives you a big indicator too of what your own thoughts towards the situation is, isn't it? Because if they're from internal, then that is your own way of saying to you, hold on a minute, I'm not quite doing something right here, and I know that, and I want to do something different, but I don't know how. Compared to somebody actually trying to put their own opinions onto you and their own ways of doing things, and you're trying to actually conform to that and live up to that when you know that it's not right, it gives you that freeing aspect of making it, maybe it's a little bit easier when it's coming from somebody else's expectation to let go of it than when it's coming from internal. I think, do you think that it's harder to let go of when it's an internal thought process rather than external?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have internalized it and it's become one of your core values, that's the whole point, right? It is something that is important to you. So you then change the script in your brain from, there are all these things that I have to do to make me behave in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
These things are really important to me. And because they're important, my brain can now work out the way to make it happen.
Right.
We used to, when I started coaching, we talk about motivation quite a lot. And there was always this example of, you know, if I asked you to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, you'd say no.
Yeah, it's like, you've got to be kidding. I've only just got to sleep by then. You know?
But if I told you, I need you to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get to the airport to go on an all expenses trip to the Caribbean, you'd wake up at 3:30 and you wouldn't get the alarm clock right. It's all about what's at the other end. And if we don't link what we're doing with something that we want, the motivation isn't there. So then we're relying on willpower. Mm-hmm. And we love to think that willpower is like the be all and end all, but it doesn't work. It's like a muscle. Eventually it weakens. Mm-hmm. And then you have
so true.
Because
because then you're failing on that, aren't you? And you're letting things go. Yeah, definitely. And that willpower isn't working for you, so you start beating yourself up, don't you, and thinking, well, why isn't it working? What am I doing wrong? And it all starts again.
Yeah, exactly. And then more and more you're sitting sort of on the settee scrolling through social media but not really paying attention, because what you're really doing is sitting there going, I'm so rubbish, I can't get going, all these things that I need to get done, and I can't, I'm just scrolling here. And it's like this internal dialogue that, like guilt paralysis. Mm-hmm. It stops you moving. Positive guilt, when it's connected to your core values, makes you move. Mm-hmm. Because it is so important to you that you will do it. So as an example, something like doing the washing up, right? Doing the washing up. Now, if to you, it's not one of your core values to have a perfectly tidy kitchen, if you're happy with rinsing things as you need them, then that's fine.
True, yes.
And, the Instagram world will tell you, oh no, you need everywhere to look like a show home. But when you're in the middle of that, you can see that you're not doing something, and that makes you feel guilty. But by sort of recycling that and going, actually, it's because to me it's not that important, that can help you feel like, okay, that's now something not that I have to worry about. I may do it or I may not, but I'm not going to make myself feel guilty about not doing it, because I understand now that it's just not something that's important to me. And that's where the external stuff comes in. Because I'm pretty sure that as I said that, there'll be people watching who go, how can you not do the washing up? Okay, that is completely true, but you've got to get honest with yourself. And if it's not something that's particularly important to you, get a dishwasher.
Yeah, exactly.
There are other options, but you have to get yourself to the point where you go, I just don't want to spend my time doing that thing. And having that freedom to then go, my choice is to do it this way, rather than, and it's very, very common, my mum always washed up after every meal, therefore that's what I should do. But if it's easier lifestyle and you're trying to cram more in, it's maybe
you can't always do it, can you? No, exactly. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, isn't it? It's just having those, when you have that, starting that feeling of guilt that you're not doing something that you think you should be doing, is asking, is it a core value of mine anyway, or am I placing this expectation upon myself just because I think it's something I should be doing, but really it doesn't worry me and it's not necessary. And, you know, do I wash up now straight after dinner, or actually can I leave it another hour or so and be able to sit and snuggle with my boy at bedtime and read him a story, instead of stressing over the fact that I haven't done the washing up? And then you've got even more guilt, because you're torn of, do I take care of the home? Do I take care of my child? Do I, you know, give him the attention that he's craving? And which way to turn? And I think that's really valid point, is actually thinking about whether or not it's a core value, and if it means anything to you, and setting the boundaries for them as well, isn't it? Of actually knowing when to say enough is enough and when to stop. And that's something that I've always struggled with, is I'm a terrible perfectionist, and I'm trying to call myself a recovering perfectionist, because I'm trying to get over everything of that it is okay. You know, I used to drive my husband mad because I wouldn't leave the house before I straightened the cushions on the sofa, and all those stupid things. But it's actually just letting go and recognizing that doesn't matter. So what if I walk back into the house and my cushions aren't perfect? It doesn't matter. What was important is actually that my youngest is chomping at the bit because he wants to get out of the house and go and do something with me, and that's where I need to be. And it's putting those boundaries on there to know when enough is enough, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Because there's the reality that what you do can never be enough. Perfection doesn't exist. So to have a scenario where you put your life on some kind of hold until these things are done, you've just put your life on hold, because there is no end game. Whereas if you can have that time to say what's important to me, you can then make the choices better, you know. And sometimes it's just as easy as, when I go to bed tonight, what do I want to be thinking of? I want to be thinking that I got everything done, but I feel terrible because I could see my son playing on his own, and, you know, I was rushing past him, and yes, I was very productive, but I feel like crap.
Yeah.
Or do I still know that there's a ton of dishes to be washed, and I know there's still a ton of ironing and washing, but I saw him smiling away that I didn't before.
Yeah, that we'd have missed otherwise. Yeah.
Just fast forwarding to how you want to feel looking back can sometimes help you make the decision. But, and I guess the kind of point of this whole conversation is that in order to do that, you need to give your brain space to think. So that's where taking that break and pausing becomes so critical.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get overrun with busyness, and actually the only way that you can do this process is by a 10-minute cup of coffee in the back garden, where you just go, right, what do I want the day to look like? And that's why it's critical. It's not, we sometimes redefine taking time for ourselves as me time, and all these different connotations of what me time means.
Yeah.
Half of them is me time being selfish, that we're disregarding other people by focusing on ourselves. And the reality is, if we don't focus on ourselves, we are not going to be able to help other people anywhere near as much as we could if we looked after ourselves first.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? There's just, we all worry so much and feel guilty about putting ourselves first, and that by doing that we're neglecting everybody else around us that needs our care and attention. But if we don't do that, and we don't do things to actually focus on our own well-being, we're no good to anybody, least of all ourselves, because then you just end up more and more tired, more frustrated, more stressed, and on burnout, and you just can't do anything. And then you beat yourself up because you're becoming snappish to everybody around you, because you're just so frazzled and so exhausted, and all you can think about is what your, you know, the massive to-do list that you've got the following day, isn't it? I think sometimes when we think about pausing and feeling guilty about pausing to take a break to actually gather ourselves and gather our thoughts, the instant attachment to that is that, you know, having a spa day or something, isn't it? And actually taking yourself off and having a spa day. But it's not about having a bit of pampering, and it doesn't have to be that 10 minutes in the garden with a cup of coffee just so that you can think straight is sometimes all you need. And, you know, once you've done that, and sometimes I think you can get so caught up in the situation that you're in and what you're trying to do all the time, that you get to that can't see the wood for the trees situation, don't you? And you just don't know what to do first, what's the right or wrong way to do something, and what the situation is that you've got to deal with next. And I think being able to take that time to think it through, and I think that's the silly thing, is we know that if we actually did that, life would be so much easier, wouldn't it, and so much better. But whatever reason, which I think is probably guilt, we don't do it, do we?
Yeah, and I think we've got, particularly women have this, you know, if we think of social media, we've got this idea of what parenting looks like, and being a 20-something looks like, based on what we're seeing on social media. And if you only look at social media, what you see, and I'll use the parenting example, is women running around with no time for themselves because they're busy taking kids to lessons or doing the school runs or getting the house done, and then it splits up into the people who celebrate that and the people who then use that as the reason for going and cracking open the wine at, 3:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But at its very bottom, it's this concept of, as a woman, you are extremely busy all the time. So if you imagine you get your life sorted and you simplify and you organise yourself, the biggest guilt trip you're going to have is that you're not busy.
Yeah, it's very true, isn't it? Because once you've got empty space, you try and fill it.
Yeah, everybody else is. And so we're so scared of not doing what other people are doing and not looking as busy, because that by far is the overriding characteristic that we're supposed to have as women or as parents, that we actually create a lot of the noise for ourselves because we don't want the vacuum. We don't want that time. Well, I've got all mine done. I've got time to myself because I've done everything. We wrap it up in different ways. It's and we make excuses. Oh well, I had the spa day because I've been really stressed and I needed this, and we justify taking time for ourselves. We think we're going to be judged for just saying, actually, I've done everything that I needed to get done, and now I'm going to chill.
Yeah, that's exactly it, isn't it? Actually, you're right. There is that we beat ourselves up worrying about what other people are going to think, and if we're being judged for daring to take time to ourselves, when it's perfectly acceptable to go and chill and to go and do something and have 5 minutes to ourselves. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's the main reason, I think, isn't it, is why we don't pause and take a break to gather ourselves, is all of that. And so, what do you think then, if you sort of give the biggest tip on how to not feel guilty about that, what would you say?
I think it's about understanding, being really open and conscious about how you're spending your time. And so having a full list of everything that you need to get done, because the biggest thing that creates that paralysis is just this fog of being very busy but not really understanding what on. Once you've got that list, you can then look down that list, and to me, you put it into the should pile, i.e. it's there because I feel like I should do it but I don't really want to, or the want to pile, the ones that you can see I really need to get those done. So that in itself can be the biggest eye-opener of how much you're giving yourself in to do on things that actually, when you're honest, you don't care if they're done or not, because it's going to be really difficult. You're just relying on willpower, and that's why you will fail, and you will create that failure because the willpower will not be strong enough. You have to want to do something, and having just that clarity around what it is you're trying to do with your time, and then questioning that can be the difference between knowing, okay, these are the things that I have to get done. These are the things that I don't have to get done. And each time you do that, that process gets quicker and quicker. So at first, it may take half an hour to sit down and write everything out. But eventually, that 10 minutes in the garden will be enough for you to go, okay, no, yes, right, that's what I'm doing next. And it can get quicker. You have to give your brain that space to just think about everything and to give you the honest answer whether you care whether that gets done or not.
No, that's great, because I think that being able to, like at the beginning, we all sit there at the beginning of the day, don't we, and make a quick list of all the things we think that we should be doing and the things we think we need to achieve that day and have done. And having that master list to the side can make all the difference, because then you can actually see from that list what your priorities are. But I think what we forget to do sometimes when we're writing that list and making our priorities for the day is actually thinking about what are our priorities in terms of what we want from the day as well. And like you said about going to bed at the end of the day of how you want to feel is what needs to be incorporated into your day to actually do that, so that you are relieving yourself of that guilt and not going to bed guilty that either you haven't done the housework, or you haven't finished what you needed to at work at your job, or you haven't done what you needed to or you wanted to do with your kids. And it just, I think by taking that time at the beginning of the day with a to-do list of also asking yourself what you want to achieve in terms of your outlook for the day, I think that can make a huge difference, can't it?
Massive. Because also part of not feeling guilty is about acknowledging your accomplishments during the day. And if you don't understand what it was that you were trying to get done on that day, you can't.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, you know that you're exhausted and you're tired and you're ready for your bed, but you don't actually know why you're tired, or whether you were spending it on doing something that was important to you. And a lot of women who are trying to maybe be an entrepreneur or be a writer or something like that, they have this passion, this thing that they want to work on, and it's always on the to-do list. It never gets done because all these other things come up, and they don't prioritize it because they feel that it's just for them, and it makes it a selfish thing. But ultimately, if you drive everything by the same filter, by the filter of why is this important to me, then your time is actually more elastic. You can fit more in, because we all find a way of doing it when we want something badly enough.
Yeah, that's it. I think that sometimes we feel guilty, don't we, about actually doing something that is for us. Of, well, our job is to be a wife and a mum. It's not, we're not entitled to, and who are we to actually have something on the side of that fulfills ourselves and gives us a sense of being and belonging. And I think sometimes we lose how the person that we were before we had our children, don't we? And whatever it was that we were doing before that, and you can feel like you've lost your identity and that you don't have anything outside of being a mum or being a wife or being a homemaker, that actually then you just feel like you're just completely trapped, and you don't have, and you're not entitled to any breathing space to actually do something for yourself. And that can then make it difficult for you to pause and actually take the time to gather your thoughts and things, can't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because when we try to frame everything in terms of the roles that we perform, some roles, like being a parent, particularly for mothers because they tend to be the primary caregiver, it's a 24-hour job.
That's it, isn't it?
Option of I have a day off. It just doesn't exist. No. You don't get an hour off, and anyone who's tried to have a nice quiet cup of tea, you can guarantee that's the time when you hear something being flushed down the toilet, or
this isn't it.
Or worse, you don't hear anything and you think, what on earth are they doing? But you're never going to be off the clock for that. So you have to fit other things around it. Now, instinctively, we do it anyway, right? We don't stop being a wife because we've become a mum. We don't stop being a daughter because we've become a mum. And in the course, in my course, I talk about how many different roles we are trying to play at any time. And the biggest mistake people make is, because parenting is the 24-hour one, they give all their priority to that, not realizing that they still have these other roles going on in the background.
Yeah, that's so true.
When you talk to women who, around the empty nest syndrome, that's exactly it. When the time required to look after the children has passed, they look back and go, well, I have no idea how to spend my time, not on them. And they lose that sense of self and that identity.
Yeah.
You either get a bit lost and not really sure what to do, or you do the rebellion, right? You go, right, this is my time now, and you go completely the other way, and then start feeling guilty because you've kind of gone to an extreme. A spa weekend every couple of weeks, and your poor husband's like, I don't actually see you that often.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, where are you?
it's all about achieving the balance. All of the
yeah.
carry on all the time. How do you maintain them? If you do it via the time, you will feel like you're failing, because there isn't enough time to do all of them perfectly. But there is ways of using each role to really understand what's important about how you treat that other person, and that can determine how you keep those roles going. And that's never about time. You know, I think of a text in the middle of the day from my husband just saying, oh, I just saw this funny thing on the TV and I thought of you. That for me is just as important as him coming in and, you know, taking me to dinner or buying me flowers.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the acknowledgement that I popped into his head, and I like that. It can be, small moments can be far more potent. And once we disconnect our obligations from that time, it can help us feel like we are achieving more than we think we are if we look at, you know, our schedule for the day.
I think that's so true, isn't it? I think that a lot of the times we're looking for these big, massive things to be happening to give us an indication that things are good and things are great, and having them as the acknowledgement that all is okay. But actually those little small things sometimes, where we get so caught up doing everything else that we're not able to be fully present in the moment of what's going on, and we just, those things like the text messages happen and you just take them for granted, when actually they're a great little indicator that all is good, that everything is great, and it's okay to stop what you're doing to actually reply to your husband if he's taken the time to send you a message, because you think, yeah, this is he's talking to me, this is good. You know, you're not arguing, and you know, you've taken time to have that during the day instead of screaming at each other the second he walks through the door because the kids have just driven you nuts all day and you're so glad he's home and you need to pass them over, but he's just getting in from work and he's just like, actually I just want to sit down. But being able to grab those little moments and use those as you know, recognition that actually everything is okay and that you are doing a good job and everything is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly with a husband and wife scenario, you know, I certainly know many people who play that, you know, I'm more tired than you.
Yeah, you have the competition every day, don't you?
Exactly. And as a woman, you sit there and go, my job is 24 hours a day. You know, Friday afternoon, you know, when he comes home at 6 o'clock tonight, he's off for the weekend.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
You know, but part of that is that conversation that you have together to go, how do we do this together? And how do we give what each of us can to that, you know, to the parenting, to the house, and having it as a conversation. What tends to happen is we start looking more outwards than inwards. Yeah. So look at our Facebook groups and what our friends are doing, and go, well, we're not doing that, so we must be getting it wrong. Yeah. The most important people are you and your partner, you and your children, and listening to each other, and you can work it out. You don't need the experts to tell you how.
No, exactly. And I think it's really important, isn't it? We feel guilty about pausing to make time for ourselves, but I think also we need to pause and make time for our relationships with our spouses as well, don't we? Because we can be so busy all the time functioning as mum and dad that we forget to be husband and wife. And if you haven't got that, then you lose the connection with each other as well, and then that makes it hard to do things that you want to do and actually live the life you want to live. And it's really important to not feel guilty about making time for each other too as well, and having the odd date night. And you know, if you can't go out together because of babysitting and the kids are young, then make the effort to turn the TV off, isn't it, and have a date night together at home instead. I think it's really, really important.
Guilt tells you to be isolated because what you're feeling guilty about is kind of socially unacceptable behaviour. You know, what you're doing is wrong. Therefore, it forces you, or it encourages you to disconnect from the people around you. And so it can be very isolating. As soon as you can make a step to talk to other people and to let them help you in some way, whether that's letting you rant about what kind of day you've had, or sending that text in the middle of the day with, you know, a funny meme on it or something.
Yeah.
Something that just demonstrates that you are not in this alone can combat a lot of that guilt that might still be there, but now you don't feel like you're having to try and deal with everything on your own, and ultimately, if you're a failure, then the entire world is failing.
Yeah.
Where guilt gets us to, you know, if I'm not a good parent, then everybody else is judging me, and that means that I'm socially excluded. Isolation, we're not supposed to be in isolation from anyone, and it's our relationships that help us maintain a sense of pragmatism, because otherwise, if you're on your own, you know, you can get yourself completely in a tizzy, and then, you know, your husband or your partner comes in and they're like, why are you so stressed about that? It's nothing. You know?
Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
A mum trying to create Christmas dinner, for example. Christmas dinner, it's fine, but in your head you've kind of isolated yourself and gone, no, this has to be the most perfect Christmas dinner ever.
Yeah, we do, don't we? Absolutely. Yeah, okay, perfect. Okay, so once we've kind of figured out in our minds and we start able to be recognizing whether it's, you know, where the voice in our head is coming from, or whether it's internal or external, and how to respond to that, what would your tip be really on maybe like a mindset shift or something on how to convince yourself that it is okay, that pausing to take a break is a good thing, and to move away from that guilt and actually allow yourself to do that and actually start making time for you? How would you go about doing that, as a mindset shift or something?
Yeah, I think the main thing to remember is that the most caring and generous thing we can do for others is to look after ourselves.
Yeah, it's true.
I always use the example of the airplane flight safety thing around the oxygen masks.
Yeah.
And they always say, fit your mask before fitting that of others. And for most parents, they would be horrified at that. Yeah. I have to look after my child. But when you follow the logic, if you're collapsed on the floor, even if they're okay, what use are you?
Yeah, that's very true.
You've fallen on a sword that wasn't necessary. And the only way we can continue to care for others is if we are strong enough and healthy enough and calm enough to be there for them. So the mindset shift is really about, rather than thinking of self-care as selfish, it's actually selfless. It's the biggest gift you can give to other people is to make sure that you're okay enough to be there for them for the long run. You know, there's a lot of burnout that we have, you know, and stressed women, you know, anxiety is higher than ever at the moment, depression, because of all these expectations of think we have to do.
Yeah.
And all of those get solved the second that you can think that by looking after yourself, you are effectively giving to other people. And just being able to remind yourself of that on a regular basis, every time you hear yourself think that's selfish, go, no, this is me looking after myself,
right? Yeah,
so that I can give to other people. You can't give what's not there.
No, very true.
You have to fill your own tanks first.
Yeah, definitely. And it's very much that, isn't it, is that you have to refuel yourself in order to be able to be there for other people, I think. And there's kind of a case of, it's reframing the guilt, isn't it, and the thought process that goes along with it, and telling yourself that you're doing it to make life easier, and by doing that and by looking after your own well-being as well, is that you're able to then give your family a better quality of life, because you've done everything else that you need to behind that. And then instead of feeling guilty about pausing and taking a moment, and feeling guilty about those thoughts of, you know, the comparing of whether you're doing a good job or not, is to actually using that as a guilt trigger. And if you know that trigger is kicking off, it's like, right, this is the moment where I need to stop and think, where I'm feeling guilty because I need to pay attention to this and ask myself what's going on, and then actually reframe that guilt of how can I make it selfless, so that I am looking after myself. Is that what you think?
Yeah. I mean, if you think of if you caught a stomach bug or you had flu, would you go into the middle of the room and, you know, cough over everyone?
Exactly.
But, you know, it's the same principle. When we know that where we are could impact other people, we'll make that connection. Okay, I've got to look after myself, because I could infect them, I could impact them, and I don't want them feeling the way that I do. So we have it inbuilt in us that we know how to protect others, but we have to be able to understand that the biggest protection we can give is by making sure that we're not the one that's contagious, that we're looking after ourselves in a way that doesn't allow that spread. Because you know yourself, if you get stressed, first thing that happens around you is your kids get stressed.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it?
Everybody around you gets kind of infected with that idea that there's something to be worried about. And it's all driven from you sometimes. So if you can take that time to calm down, that then spreads that through the people around you.
Yeah.
And then it takes away that need of I haven't got time, I can't pause. Realize that actually it's the pause that helps you reset all of it.
That's great. Yeah, that's brilliant, because that's exactly it, isn't it? It's the pause is what's needed to actually deal with the situation, and once you've done that, you can have that moment to regroup and work out what your next steps are, and off you go again, and you're sorted. But it's so important that we need to do that. So I think the main thing is that we know that it's, what we need to do. We need to be able to tell ourselves that it is okay to stop and reframe that guilt and listen to where those voices are coming from to help you decide which way you need to respond to it. This is brilliant. I could talk to you all day about this, but I want it to be able to give these action steps for them so that they don't feel guilty and they know how to, that it is okay to pause and stop and everything without it being too long that they don't want to lose. So I think I definitely need to arrange another get together, because there are so many questions that I know that all of my readers have and things, and all the guilt, the different areas of guilt within mum life and work life and ourselves that we could really dig in deep to and hopefully help them with. So we're going to definitely have to do that. So tell me more. I know you mentioned about your course that you're doing. Tell me more about that and where people can find you if they want to.
So at the moment, my little idea has started to sprout quite a few arms and legs and everything. So it all originated from a Facebook group that's completely open and public. It's called Journey Through the Guilt Trip. I do daily videos and Facebook Lives on various aspects of guilt. And there's about, I think we've just hit over 100 people already in the group. So
wow, that's good.
Great. And I'm getting a lot of really good feedback of just people seeing guilt in slightly different way that just feel a bit better about things. So it all started off with that. But then I realized that there were tools that I used with my one-to-one clients that were very focused on helping release them from guilt. And so I created the online course that was able to step you through. There's only like 3 exercises, but it steps you through how to think about guilt trips and how to process them in a different way, but also about exploring those relationships that you have, those roles that you play that might be putting unnecessary pressure on you, and how you can kind of step away from what's expected and move closer to what it is you want to focus on. So that's really the focus of the online program. And as you say, most of the time when you talk to people, there's more that needs to be unpicked and more questions come up. So I'm hoping later in the year to create a group coaching kind of course, a set of webinars where people can do the content from the online course, but with me there and with the group.
Fantastic.
And kind of walk through it a little bit more. I find that everyone has guilt and they have different ways of coping with it. Some people are comfortable admitting it and some people aren't. So it was important to me to give a format that somebody could do in the privacy of their home. Nobody else needs to have anything to do with it, but also to provide some form of support if they felt brave enough or that they felt that it was something that they wanted to share with people. So the online course is being launched on the 15th of May.
Okay.
Which means that I've got a very long to-do list.
Yeah, I bet.
But hopefully it'll, I'm really excited about it going out, and
Sounds amazing.
changing, hopefully changing people, giving people permission to just not feel so guilty all the time.
I think that's what it is, isn't it? Is being able to give ourselves permission and realize that it is okay to have, and give them permission to just let go and not feel guilty. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll pop a link for your Facebook group because I'm in that and it's brilliant. And Lee's videos are amazing. There are so many really, really good ones in there. So you guys need to go and check it out. So I'll pop that in the link in the notes once you finish watching. Head over and sign up to the group and you'll get a huge amount of benefit from it, I promise you. And if you're not already signed up to my list as well, then head over to asimpleandcontentedlife.com and click on the top on the resource library, and you can sign up for free there, and you'll have access to all of my resources and printables as well. Between us, I'm sure there's something that either Lee or me can give you that are going to help you guys to stop feeling so guilty about all the things that we need to be doing, and that it is okay to pause and take a break and gather yourself and give yourself time for you. So thanks so much, Lee. I'm really hoping, and I know that really well, that this has definitely answered the question that we had from the reader about feeling guilty and wanting time to be able to do everything. And yeah, it's perfect balance to it. Thank you so much, and look forward to our next chat. And yeah, brilliant. Have a great day. Thanks everybody. Bye.
Bye.